Hey, what's up you guys? It's Jaded back again with the state of class videos. This time around, taking a look at Wizard. Now, I want to preface this video and any state of the class videos that I do, other than the Barbarian of course, with the fact that I don't play all of these classes a whole lot. I don't have endgame gear for all of them, and so it's kind of more a personal opinion slash my impressions on the current state of the class. And you know, I really want to promote like you guys responding if I get something wrong or if I didn't think about something, as well as just leaving your comments as to how you feel, like if you're playing the Wizard, how you feel it needs to change or improve, where you'd like to see buffs, nerfs, things like that. So without further ado, I want to start off with kind of going over the whole crit mass spec and, you know, giving my stance on it, how I feel about it, how I feel playing it, and those sort of things. So first and foremost, you know, the crit mass spec is very cheaply to gear. I think out of all the builds in the game, out of all of the classes, different options you have, crit mass spec is probably the easiest to build for high monster power levels. And that's just plain and simply due to the fact that you crowd control everything. And at least for the most part, there are some ranged attacks and things that will hit you and you have to kind of move out of the way of stuff. But for the most part, everything's crowd controlled. You're taking way less damage than everything else. And because of that, it's great in a party setting. I'd say one of the best things going for the Wizard is that it kind of fills a role in the game. And it does it in a way that, you know, I don't think other classes really fill a specific role as much as the Wizard. And that's because, you know, the amount of CC you bring to the table is, I want to say it's kind of broken. But, you know, I'm not saying it needs to be nerfed or anything. I just think it's insanely strong, let's put it that way. I thought with the crowd control changes that they were implementing in the previous patch, I thought that would completely, you know, eliminate this build from existence, or it just wouldn't be nearly as good or something like that. You'd have to wait a certain duration, or I don't know. I thought it would, you know, eliminate this build. That didn't happen, and CC is still very strong on this, and that's kind of the role that you play when you're playing crit mass in a party setting. But you also have party buffs. You know, you have the giant bubble where everyone can either stand in it, or you can put that on, you know, whatever you're killing. For the most part, every class has some sort of party buff or multiple party buffs that they bring to the table, but Wizard's not a slouch in that area either. Now, that's not to say other classes don't fill roles as well. You know, you could look at the Barb as a tank, the kind of tank stuff. They don't really have a lot of taunting. You know, the only skill you get that you could put a rune on to taunt is garbage. And so that kind of eliminates them from being a great tank. I remember way back when crit mass Wizards were tanks, and they kind of filled the role as the Barb back then when everybody was tanking up because Inferno was so hard and gear just wasn't there yet. And so you had like crit mass Wizards who would tank for you. That was pretty cool. But since then, the game's kind of changed a lot. And so, you know, Barbs aren't really tanking anymore. Everyone's just kind of got gear to crush the content for the most part. I mean, if you're under geared, you know, you're playing in low monster power levels anyways. But anyways, getting back to it, you know, for crit mass, I think the biggest problem I have playing it, and the reason I don't enjoy it, is you're gonna get carpal tunnel or you're gonna break your keyboard. It really is a really spammy, like, mash your head into the keyboard class. There is a little bit of finesse that you have to do, but for the most part you're just rolling your fingers across 3 keys. Occasionally, you know, you press the left mouse button, occasionally you might teleport or, you know, put up your time warp. But for me, I mean, I just don't really enjoy mashing the keyboard like that. It's not a fun playstyle for me. Other people might disagree with me and really enjoy it, I don't know. But for me, that's the biggest drawback to playing crit mass. That being said, you know, for PvP, I don't think crit mass will work at all. I could be wrong, but I really don't think it will. And we're probably going to see a lot of other builds, a lot more interesting builds. This is kind of why I'm excited for PvP to come out, because we're going to start seeing other interesting builds and a whole different aspect to the game that we haven't seen yet. And I haven't thought about it too much, but I think Blizzard's going to be a great skill because it just kind of covers an area where you don't want to walk in. You know, a lot of abilities like that where it covers ground on the screen I can't think of any right now, but you know, skills like that are going to be very important because it's going to force people into different directions in the map. At least I would think it would. Maybe people are just too tanky, or the stats don't line up for that to even matter. I don't know. But I think, you know, Blizzard's going to be a great skill, and just the amount of control that a wizard brings to the table will be very important. Now, getting back to the other builds that we're looking at, the only other major one I would say for the wizard is going to be the Archon spec. There are a few others that I've seen, but for the most part, you're either doing crit mass or you're doing Archon. And so those are the two that I'm going to really be covering here. When it comes to Archon, I think the biggest problem I have and the biggest area of improvement that you could do with the class is just spice it up so it's not so boring. And the reason for me it's so boring is because when you shift into Archon form, all you have is damaging abilities. So you can, you know, do your straight line damaging beam, or you could do another skill that does damage at the same time you're doing damage, or you could do another skill that just does damage. Like, there's nothing interesting when you're in Archon form, and there's no really mechanics there, or even any passives or other skills that you can throw into the mix that make being in Archon form interesting. So what I would recommend Blizzard looking at is one of two things. So you could go the route of just turn Archon into one button. So you press Archon, and then all your skills stay the same, but while you're in Archon form, the Archon button or the slot that you had Archon just turns into that beam, and that's it. Everything else stays the same. And I haven't really thought about what that would do to the game. It might make Wizard insanely overpowered, I don't know. But the other route would be to give Archon more skills. You know, when you shift into Archon, you have 3 skills that essentially do the same thing. You know, one of them's on a cooldown, so it doesn't. But for the most part, they're all damaging abilities. There's nothing different. And you can have the rune to, you know, give you teleport, but it's just straight damaging. And so the other route they could take is just give you more skills to play with. When you're in Archon form, you know, maybe you get a different form of Blizzard, or you get a different form of other skills that the wizard naturally gets or has the option to choose, but it kind of forces you to use them in Archon form. So I feel like those are the 2 routes you could take to make Archon more interesting. You know, it's just, as it stands, not a very exciting build to use for me. And so, you know, those are just some of the things I came up with to improve it. My overall impressions, I guess, of the class and the current state of it, I get is that it's in a good place. It's not in a place where it's hurting. I think Wizard's always been a great class in the game. I think, you know, early on it had a lot of broken stuff going on with it, but, you know, you could say Demon Hunters did as well, or Barbs did as well in certain scenarios. But I do feel like a lot of the abilities aren't getting used on the class. You know, something I didn't talk about, which I almost forgot about, is the ability to use your skills while you're in Archon form, like your buffs. That's all I want to be able to use. Just allow me to buff my shield again. I don't want to pop out to pop back in. That kind of seems silly, you know, if you think about it. Like, why can't you do that? Why do I have to take a passive slot just to allow my shield buff to last longer, you know, the armor buff? So, you know, I'm not expecting like another whole build to crop up or something. I realize there's going to be the best of the best builds, and I mean, as it stands, Wizard has 2 very nice builds going for it. I would just like to see those changes. Really, that's all I wanted to cover. If you guys have any other comments, things you would like to see with the class, like I said, leave it below and I'll read all of them. If you have any predictions on like what's going to be good in PvP, I'd love to hear that. But that's going to do it for me. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I guess I'll see you again soon.